Hello and welcome back. And as you all know, we are reading the psychology of money, the almighty psychology of money. And the last time we read it, we read the blurb, which is the back of the book. So we read the content also, that is the content of the book, we read it out, and also the introduction and quotes that we have in the book, the front few pages of the book, like Napoleon and Sherlock Holmes. Also read the introduction also. So welcome back to our reading. Welcome back to our reading. This okay, I was about to say this is the day. I actually missed it when they say a version of you. This particular book does not have day, because we are not taking steps to being a happier version of ourselves yet. No, of course, reading is taking steps to being a happier version of ourselves, but yet we're not doing day, we're not even doing chapter. We are just going to be reading for as long as we want to. So we've read parts of the introduction, the greatest show on earth. Okay, I think after this book, so an idea came to my mind. After this book, I think it will be much easier for you guys if I'm showing the text on the screen. So you can be reading along as I'm reading also. But for now, since we've not worked on that, for now, I'm going to go by you listening to me read. This is what we are going to be doing right now. So the introduction, right, like the author said, he said this book comprised so much of stories that he made up stories for it to be easy to follow and interesting for us to read about. So now, reading on, my favorite Wikipedia entry begins. Ronald James Reed was an American philanthropist, investor, janitor, and gas station attendant. Ronald Reed was born in rural Vermont. He was the first person in his family to graduate from high school, made all the more impressive by the fact that he hitchhiked to campus each day. For those who knew Ronald Reed, there wasn't much else worth mentioning. His life was about as low key as they come. Reed, okay, is it Reed or Reed? This is the first time I'm actually saying a name like this, Read. So we're going to go for Reed. I think I'm part of those people who loves reading book, but I find it hard to go and check up the correct pronunciation of names. I just like, oh, well, this is how to pronounce it, and I continue reading. Well, we check it out later. Or should we go and check now? No, I don't want to deviate from this reading. Reed fixed cars at a gas station for 25 years and swept floors at JCPenney for 17 years. Are you following the story? Please do. He bought a two-bedroom house for $12,000 at age 38 and lived there for the rest of his life. He was widowed at age 50 and never remarried. A friend recalled that his main hobby was chopping firewood. Reed died in 2014, aged 92, which is when the humble rural janitor made international headlines. 2,813,503, blah blah blah. Americans died in 2014. Okay, I think this kind of information that naturally I wouldn't source for. Well, that's why it's good to read. You get to travel around the world while reading. You get to expand your knowledge of things. It does not even limit you to what you are reading about. Imagine now we are reading about money and see where we are. Fewer than 4,000 of them had a net worth of over $8 million when they passed away. Ronald Reed was one of them. In his will, the former janitor left $2 million to his stepkids and more than $6 million to his hospital and library. Those who knew Reed were baffled. Where did he get all that money from? It turned out there was no secret. There was no lottery win and no inheritance. Reed saved what little he could and invested it in blue chip stocks. Then he waited for decades on end as tiny savings compounded into more than $8 million. That's it. From janitor to philanthropist. That's the story of Ronald James Reed. A few months before Ronald died, another man named Richard was in the news. Richard Fuscon was everything Ronald was not. a Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive with an MBA. Fuscon had such a successful career in finance that he retired in his 40s to become a philanthropist. Former Merrill CEO David Komansky praised Fuscon's business savvy, leadership skills, sound judgment, and personal integrity. Crane's Business magazine once included him in a 40 under 40 list of successful business people. But then, like the gold coin skipping tech executive, do you remember him? It was in the first story we told. Everything fell apart. In the mid 2000s, Fuscon borrowed heavily to expand an 18,000 square foot in Greenwich, Connecticut that had 11 bathrooms, 2 elevators, 2 pools, 7 garages, and cost more than $90,000 a month to maintain. Wow. Woo. Then the 2018 financial crisis hit. The crisis hurt virtually everyone's finances. It apparently turned Fuscons into dust. High debt and illiquid assets left him bankrupt. I currently have no income, he allegedly told a bankruptcy judge in 2008. First, his Palm Beach house was foreclosed. In 2014, it was the Greenwich Mansion's turn. 5 months before Ronald left his fortune to charity, Richard Foscon's home, where guests record the thrill of dining and dancing atop a see-through covering on the home's indoor swimming pool, was sold in a foreclosure auction for 75% less than an insurance company figured it was worth. Wow. Ronald was patient, Richard was greedy. That's all it took to eclipse the massive education and experience gap between the two. The author has told stories of two in the introduction. The first one was Ronald, while the second one was Richard. You all remember the story of Ronald, right? Ronald is the janitor who became a philanthropist, and Richard is a rich executive man who works for the NBA. That's all it took to eclipse the massive education and experience gap between the two. The lesson here is not to be more like Ronald and less like Richard. Though that's not a bad advice, that's from the author. The fascinating thing about these stories is how unique they are to finance. In what other industry does someone with no college degree, no training, no background, no formal experience, and no connections massively outperform someone with the best education, the best training, and the best connections? I struggle to think of any. It is impossible to think of a story about Ronald performing a heart transplant better than a Harvard-trained surgeon, or designing a skyscraper superior to the best-trained architect. There will never be a story of a janitor outperforming the world's top nuclear engineer. But these stories do happen in investing. There is not a story whereby someone with no medical knowledge will outperform a surgeon when they get to the theater. But this can happen when it comes to finance. That's what the author is trying to tell us here. This can happen when it comes to investing and finance. The fact that Ronald can coexist with Richard has two explanations. One, financial outcomes are driven by luck, independent of intelligence and effort. That's true to some extent, and this book will discuss it in further detail. We are both here to learn. I don't know also. Or two, which the author thinks is more common, is that financial success is not a hard science. It is a soft skill where how you behave is more important than what you know. I call this soft skill the psychology of money. The aim of this book is to use short stories to convince you that soft skills are more important than the technical side of money. I will do this in a way that will help everyone, from rich to Fuscon to everyone in between, make better financial decisions. These soft skills are, I have come to realize, greatly underappreciated. Moving on. Two topics impact everyone, whether you are interested in them or not. One, health. Two, money. Health and money. These two topics interest everyone, whether you are interested in it or not. The healthcare industry is a triumph of modern science. With rising life expectancy across the world, scientific discoveries have replaced doctors' old idea about how human body works, and virtually everyone is healthier because of it. The money industry, which includes investing, personal finance, business planning, is another story entirely. Finance has scooped up the smartest mind coming from top universities over the last 2 decades. Financial engineering was the most popular major in Princeton School of Engineering a decade ago. Financial engineering. Wow. I don't think there's financial engineering in Nigeria because this is the first time I'm actually hearing of financial engineering. So, it was the most popular major in Princeton School of Engineering a decade ago. Is there any evidence it has made us better investors? No, I have seen none. Through collective trial and error over the years, we have learned how to become better farmers, skilled plumbers, and advanced chemists. But as trial and error taught us to become better with our personal finances, are we less likely to bury ourselves in debt, more likely to save for a rainy day, prepare for retirement, have realistic views about what money does and doesn't do to our happiness? I've seen no compelling evidence. Most of the reason why I believe is that we think about and are thought about money in ways that are too much like physics with rules and laws, you get, and not enough like psychology, which is with emotions and nuances. And that to me is as fascinating as it is important. Money is everywhere. It affects all of us and confuses most of us. Everyone thinks about it a little differently. It offers lessons on things that apply to many areas of life, like risk, confidence, and happiness. Few topics offer a more powerful magnifying glass that helps explain why people behave the way they do than money. It is the one of the greatest show on earth. My own appreciation for the psychology of money is shaped by more than a decade of writing on the topic. Wow. So the author has been writing on this for more than a decades ago. I began writing about finance in early 2008. It was the dawn of a financial crisis and the worst recession in 80 years. To write about what was happening, I wanted to figure out what was happening. But the first thing I learned after the financial crisis was that no one could accurately explain what happened or why it happened, let alone what should be done about it. For every good explanation, there was an equally convincing comeback. Engineers can determine the cause of a bridge collapse because there is agreement that if a certain amount of force is applied to a particular area, that area will break. Physics isn't controversial, it's guided by laws. Finance is different, it's guided by people's behavior. And how I behave might make sense to me, but I might look crazy to you. The more I studied and wrote about the financial crisis, the more I realized that you could understand it better through the lenses of psychology and history, not finance. To grasp why people bury themselves in debt, you don't need to study interest rates. You need to study the history of greed, insecurity, and optimism to get why investors sell at the bottom of a bear market. You don't need to study the math of expected future returns. You need to think about the agony of looking at your family and wondering if your investments are imperiling their future. I love Volatile's observation that history never repeats itself, man does. It applies so well to how we behave with money. In 2018, I wrote a report outlining 20 of the most important flaws, biases, and causes of bad behavior I have seen affect people when dealing with money. It was called The Psychology of Money, and over 1 million people have read it. This book is a deeper dive into the topic. Some short passages from the reports appear unaltered in this book. What I am holding is 20 chapters. What I am holding is 20 chapters, and each describing what I consider to be the most important and often counterintuitive features of the psychology of money. The chapters revolve around a common theme but exist on their own and can be read independently. That is to say, each chapter can be read independently. It's not like it's a continuation. It's not a long book. Thank you. You're welcome. Most readers don't finish the books they begin because most single topics don't require 300 pages of explanation. I'd rather make 20 short points you finish than one long one you give up on. So, on we go. Let's move on. Chapter 1. No one is crazy. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.0000001% of what has happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. Now let's start. Let me tell you about a problem, not me, the author. It might make you feel better about what to do with your money and less judgmental about what other people do with theirs. People do some crazy things with money, but no one is crazy. Here is the thing: people from different generations, raised by different parents, who earn different incomes and held different values in different parts of the world, born into different economies, experiencing different job markets with different incentives and different degrees of luck, learn very different lessons. Everyone has their own unique experience with how the world works. And what you experience is more compelling than what you learn second hand. So all of us, me, everyone go through life anchored to a set of views about how money works, and that's very widely from person to person. What seems crazy to you might make sense to me. And which is why I do tell people, I do say this often, we all can follow a manual to living. This thing called life, there is no manual to it because, like the author said, yeah, different backgrounds, to different families, to different incomes, to different views, to different perspectives, to different everything. Everything is different. Even twins born on the same day from the same photos, from the same everything, sharing the same blood. What else do they share? The same speed. They differ. They are different to each other. They can never ever have the same thumbprint. Reading on. The person who grew up in poverty thinks about risks and reward in ways the child of a wealthy banker cannot fathom if he tried. Yes, of course. The person who grew up when inflation was high experienced something the person who grew up with stable prices will never have to experience, never had to. The stockbroker who lost everything during the Great Depression experienced something the tech worker basking in the glory of the late 1990s can't imagine. The Australian who hasn't seen a recession in 30 years has experienced something no American ever has. On and on, the list of experiences is endless. You know stuff about money that I don't, and vice versa. You go through life with different beliefs, goals, and forecasts than I do. That's not because one of us is smarter than the other or has better information. It is because we've had different lives shaped by different and equally persuasive experiences. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.0001% of what has happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. So equally, smart people can disagree about how and why recession happen, how you should invest your money, why you should prioritize, how much risk you should take, and so on. Every decision people make with money is justified by taking the information they have at the moment and plugging it into their unique mental model of how the world works. These people can be misinformed, they can have incomplete information, they can be bad at math, they can be persuaded by rotten marketing, they can have no idea of what they are doing, they can misjudge the consequences of their actions. Oh, can they ever? But every financial decision a person makes sense to them in that moment and checks the boxes they need to check. They tell themselves a story about what they are doing and why they are doing it. And that story has been shaped by their own unique experiences. Take a simple example, lottery tickets. Americans spend more on them than movies, video games, music, sporting events, and books combined. And who buys them? Mostly poor people. The lowest income households in the US on average spend $412 a year on lotto tickets, four times the amount of those in the highest income groups. 40% of Americans cannot come up with $400 in an emergency, which is to say, those buying $400 in lottery tickets are by and large the same people who say they couldn't come up with $400 in an emergency. They are blowing their safety net on something with 1 in a million chance of hitting it big. That seems crazy to me. It probably seems crazy to you too, but I'm not in the lowest income group. You are likely not either. So it is hard for many of us to intuitively grasp the subconscious reasoning of low income lottery ticket buyers, but strain a little. And you can imagine it going like something like this. We live paycheck to paycheck and savings seems out of reach. Our prospects for much higher wages seem out of reach. We can't afford nice vacations, new cars, health insurance.
Our homes in safe neighborhoods. We can't put our kids through college without crippling debt. Much of the stuff you people who read finance books either have now or have a good chance of getting, we don't. Buying a lottery ticket is the only time in our lives we can own a tangible dream of getting the good stuff that you already have and take for granted. We are paying for a dream, and you may not understand that because you are already living a dream. That's why we buy more tickets than you do.
You don't have to agree with this reasoning. Buying lotto tickets when you are broke is still a bad idea. But I can kind of understand why lotto ticket sales persist. And that idea, what you are doing seems crazy, but I kind of understand why you are doing it. Uncovers the root of many of our financial decisions. Few people make financial decisions purely with a spreadsheet. They make them at dinner table or in a company meeting, places where personal history, your own unique view of the world, ego, pride, marketing, and all incentives are scrambled together into a narrative that works for you. Another important point that helps explain why money decisions are so difficult and why there is so much misbehavior is to recognize how new this topic is. Money has been around for a long time. For a topic that is so influenced by emotion rather than facts, this is a problem. And it explains why we don't always do what we are supposed to do with money. We all do crazy stuff with money because we are all relatively new to this game. And what looks crazy to you might make sense to me, but no one is crazy. We all make decisions based on our own unique experiences that seem to make sense to us in a given moment. Now, let me tell you a story about how Bill Gates got rich. So moving on. I hope you're enjoying this book. Well, I have something to tell you guys. It's not everything that I am reading. If you enjoy our reading, you can go ahead to get a copy of this book because I'm not reading everything word for word. I skip some pages that I feel like okay, this explanation here is not what I should read. It's what you have to read yourself if you want to. So this book, if I'll advise everyone should own a copy of it. So now moving on to luck and risk. Nothing is as good or bad as it seems. Luck and risk are siblings. They are both the reality that every outcome in this life is guided by forces other than individual effort. NYU Professor Scott Galloway has a related idea that is so important to remember when judging success, both your own and others. Nothing is as good or bad as it seems. So, now into the story of Bill Gates. Bill Gates went to one of the only high schools in the world that had a computer. I'm just learning this. I didn't know about this before. The story of how Lakeside School, just outside Seattle, even got a computer is remarkable. Bill Doga was a World War II Navy pilot turned high school math and science teacher. He believed that book study wasn't enough without real world experience. He also realized that we need to know something about computers when we go to college. Recalled late Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. In 1968, Bill Dougal was a World War II Navy pilot turned high school math and science teacher. He believed that book study wasn't enough without real world experience. He also realized that we need to know something about computers when we get to college. In 1968, Dougal petitioned the Lakeside School Mothers Club to use the proceeds from its annual rummage sale, about $3,000, to lease a Type Model 30 computer hooked up to the General Electric mainframe terminal for computer time sharing. The whole idea of time-sharing only got invented in 1965. Gates later said someone was pretty forward-looking. Most university graduate schools did not have a computer anywhere near as advanced as Bill Gates had access to in 8th grade, and he couldn't get enough of it. Gates was 18 years old in 1968 when he met Paul Allen. Allen was also obsessed with the school's computer and the two hit it off. Lakeside's computer wasn't part of its general curriculum. It was an independent study program, letting their creativity run wild. After school, late into the night, on weekends, they quickly became competing. During one of their late night sessions, Allen recorded Gates showing him a Fortune magazine and saying, "What do you think it is like to run a Fortune 500 company?" Allen said he had no idea. "Maybe we'll have our own computer company someday," Gates said. Microsoft is now worth more than $1 trillion. A little quick math. In 1968, there were roughly 303 million high school age people in the world, according to the UN. About 18 million of them lived in the United States. About 270,000 of them lived in Washington State. A little over 100,000 lived in the Seattle area, and only about 300 of them attended Lakeside School. Start with 303 million, end with 300. One in a million high school age students attended the high school that had a combination of cash and foresight to buy a computer. Bill Gates happened to be one of them. Gates is not shy about what this means. If there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft. He told the school's graduating class in 2005. Gates is staggeringly smart, even more hardworking, and as a teenager had a vision for computers that even most seasoned computer executive couldn't grasp. He also had a one in a million head start by going to school at Lakeside. Now, let me tell you about Gates' friend, Kent Evans. He experienced an equally powerful dose of luck's close sibling, risk. Bill Gates and Paul Allen became household names thanks to Microsoft's success. But back at Lakeside, there was a third member of this gang of high school computer prodigies. Kent Evans and Bill Gates became best of friends in 8th grade. Evans was, by Gates' own account, the best student in the class. The two talked on the phone ridiculous amounts, Gates recalled in the documentary Inside Bill's Brain. "I still know Kent's phone number," he says. "It is written here, but we don't need it. Do you? 525-7851. Evans was as skilled with computers as Gates and Allen. Lakeside once struggled to manually put together the school's class schedule, a maze of complexity to get hundreds of students the classes they need at times that don't conflict with other courses. The school tasked Bill and Kent, children of course, by any measure, to build a computer program to solve the problem, and it worked. And unlike Paul Allen, Kent shared Bill's business mind and ambition. Kate always had the briefcase, like a lawyer's briefcase, Kate recalls. We were always scheming about what we would be doing in 5 or 6 years in the future. Should we go be CEOs? What kind of impact could you have? Should we go be generals? What should we go be or should we go be ambassadors? Whatever it was, Bill and Kent knew they had to do it together. After reminiscing on his friendship with Kent, Gage trails off. We would have kept working together. I am sure we would have gone to college together. Kent would have been a founding partner of Microsoft with Gates and Allen, but it would never happen. Kent died in a mountain accident. Oh my god, I wasn't so expecting this. Before he graduated high school. But it's every year there are around 3,000 mountaineering deaths in the United States. The odds of being killed on a mountain in high school are roughly 1 in a million. Bill Gates experienced 1 in a million luck by ending up at, before I turn the page, let me guess, at Lakeside School. Yes, I'm right. At Lakeside, Kent Evans experienced 1 in a million risks by never getting to finish what he and Gates set out to achieve. The same force, the same magnitude, working in opposite directions. Luck and risks are both the reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual efforts. They are so similar that you can't believe in one without equally respecting the other. They both happen because the world is too complex to allow 100% of your actions to dictate 100% of your outcomes. Wow. These are one of the things I like highlighting. They both happen, luck and risk both happen because the world is too complex to allow 100% of your action to dictate 100% of its outcomes. They are driven by the same thing. You are one person in a game with 7 billion other people and infinite moving parts. The accidental impact of actions outside of your control can be more consequential than the ones you consciously take. Both are so hard to measure and hard to accept that they often go overlooked. For every Bill Gates, there is a Kent Evans who was just as skilled and driven but ended up on the other side of life roulette. If you give luck and risk their proper respect, you realize that when judging people's financial success, both your own and others, it's never as good or bad as it seems. Oh my god, I think we're going deep into this book and I am beginning to feel it. Luck and risks. So 100% of actions does not guarantee 100% of the outcomes. We'll be stopping here for today. So join us at our next reading so you can continue reading this interesting, insightful book together. See you at our next reading. If you haven't subscribed, I don't know what you're waiting for, honestly. After this book, I don't know what you're still waiting for. If you haven't subscribed, click on that subscribe button now so that you can get notified when we start our next reading, when we drop our next reading. And do not forget to tell your friends, your family, like be your brother's keeper. Don't enjoy this alone. Tell them about this channel. Let them subscribe and comment the book you would like us to read on this channel together. So bye. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you all for joining this reading. Thank you all for the support and for the love. I appreciate it all and I love you all. Bye.